Hello and welcome to AUA's Focus Series, a podcast channel by the American University of Armenia's Media Lab. My name is Silva Sevlian, and today I have the great pleasure of having our guest, Michael Goorjian, the multi-talented, incomparable writer, filmmaker, and recent producer of Amerikatsi film. And so today is really a culmination of me studying so many of your interviews over the past 2.5 years since you premiered at the Golden Apricot Film Festival.
Yep.
And so I thought we could focus on you being Amerikatsi.
That's true, yeah.
Being at the American University of Armenia and telling Armenian stories. Sure. And so I want to speak about your first trip to Armenia in 2006 and how the experience inspired you, left an impression, made you want to not only tell an Armenian story on film, but do the filming in Armenia.
Yeah, well, that actually came, that was like not a bet, but when I was here, my friend Artsi Vakchinian, he kind of hosted me in 2006, and we screened another film that I had made called Illusion. I can't remember. It was at the Cinematographers Union, or somewhere down there. And after the screening, I was talking on stage, and I was like, "And I'm going to make a film here with Artsi." And Artsi was like, "What? Are you serious?" I was kind of joking, but I wasn't. It took me a while before I ended up doing it, but I came in 2006. I came with a friend of mine who's a journalist. We had flown to actually Istanbul. I've traveled with my friend Eric all over. He was stationed in Cambodia for a while, and so we were in Istanbul visiting friends of his, and then we flew to Trabzon and took a train to Tbilisi. And then from Tbilisi, we got a car that drove down into Armenia. I think I had read about, like, that's how you can get from Tbilisi. And I went, why did I go? We had traveled all over, and I think my friend was like, "Why aren't you, we need to go to your homeland. We need to go to Armenia." And I've always been interested in my Armenian heritage, but I didn't grow up I didn't go to church. I didn't go to an Armenian school. Most of my friends growing up were not Armenian. So it wasn't really until later in life that I got more interested in my heritage. And this trip really shifted me quite a bit. So when we got to Armenia, as I said, Artsi, he was a journalist, and he had written a book about Armenians in the diaspora who were in the arts, basically. And so he had hosted us and kind of showed us around. And it was just a kind of a life-changing experience for me. I felt a definite connection to this place, and a freedom in a way, which very much, when I finally did get to make a film here, that was one of the main aspects that fed what we were doing. It's kind of hard to describe, but making a film in the U.S., it's difficult. Like, there's so much regulation, and you have, the money involved and everything. Coming here and making a film, there was, creatively, it was very freeing. There isn't a lot of infrastructure here for filmmaking, but there's a lot of passion and as an independent filmmaker, it was a great space to be able to make something. So in a way, it is a film that I made about my heritage, but it was also just an opportunity for me as an artist. Yeah.
It took you 8 months to film Amerikatsi in Armenia in 2020. And during that time, you began filming in March of 2020 when the whole world was on lockdown. During those 8 months, there was obviously a pandemic, but also a war and just the climate in the country was something that locals were acclimating to. How did those major shifts impact Amerikatsi's story? I know it impacted the actors and the producers of the film, but did it enter the storyline?
Oh, yeah, 100%. There were, well, for one thing, because we had to, when we locked down, we would shot only maybe a week or so of the film, and then we had like 2 months where we were just sitting waiting, and we couldn't do. I was in an apartment. I would go out and jog in the morning and shop, and that was it. I think there's aspects to the film. My cinematographer, who we were all sharing an apartment, he was joking, you should go up to the set and live in the cell. It'll be good for your character. Everybody was sort of imprisoned. And for the film, that gave me a lot more space to think about things. And not just me, but everybody in the set dressers and stuff, they would sneak up to the set and work on it, even though they weren't supposed to. I think it gave myself and everybody a lot more appreciation for what we get to do. It's easy to forget. I get to play, essentially, as an artist, as a filmmaker. It's fun, and sometimes you forget that. And so I think when we finally did get back to set and got to work again, everybody just had a joy that transferred into the movie in a way. A lot of what I think works about the film is the heart. It has a sense of my cinematographer would say you can feel everyone's fingerprints on this film. Like everybody really gave in a deep way, and I think that came partially from the circumstances. And in terms of storytelling, I wouldn't say, it's not like the script adjusted that much, but, a lot of a film a script is a blueprint. And what happens when you shoot it, sometimes it's what's on the page, sometimes it's not. And with this, like when we finally did get to go back after 2 months, they said you can just shoot, stuff that involved me in the prison cell and a few other people because they didn't want a lot of people gathering. And I would say, my performance in the film was greatly fueled by those circumstances. And a lot of what happened, what grew off the page came from the circumstances.
There's so many takeaways from Amerikatsi depending on how you enter the film, right? So as an Armenian American, some of the themes that I saw in the main character, Charlie, your character, one repeating theme is voyeurism, right?
Yeah.
But I saw myself in him, how he was observing Armenian culture as an outsider and so desperately wanting to make it tangible for him in the cell. And he was also experiencing loneliness and the need of friendship and mentorship. And so I want to ask you about voyeurism, but I also want to ask you about a particular friendship, a decades-long friendship that you have with the producer, Patrick Malkasian, and how that shaped your Armenian identity, inquisitiveness, how it shaped the storyline, and why you even took on Amerikatsi as a project.
Well, the first part of what that, in terms of voyeurism, even just when you were saying that, I was realizing, in a way, a lot of the Armenian diaspora has an aspect of voyeurism inbred because we're outside. Our relationship to the country, and in a lot of cases, like for myself, the culture, we're outsiders looking in and going, what is that? I know it. I want to be it. I feel like I'm it. But there's always sort of this, I'm outside looking in. And with that, though, there's also in the film. The other side, which is what he's watching, the experience of Hayastansi, people that were born under the Soviet rule and grew up here, that I learned so much of what that was by making the film here and working with people who had that experience, and the details of what I learned as part of the diaspora, a story that I think we don't have that much exposure to. We have maybe music and films that are kind of showing it, but not really. Like, what was it like for Armenians here to be Russified, and your culture is kind of allowed, but not really. I mean, it's a type of experience that I think for us as the outsiders to know more about and feel more is important. So voyeurism, yeah, definitely was. It's an idea within the story, and it's kind of a centerpiece to what's happening. But it also reflects a lot of, I think, what Armenians are, what we deal with emotionally. And as regards to Patrick and I went to high school together. I mean, it's weird. I actually don't even remember Patrick as being Armenian. I mean, I knew we had a connection. It wasn't until years after high school that I think it was his father had passed away, and he had reached out to me, and I hadn't heard from him in years. And I went to his father's funeral in Oakland at St. Vartan's. And, from that connection, it was just we kept in touch. And then when I was writing the script, I said, hey, I'm at this coffee shop in Oakland. And he came by, and I kind of told him about it. And I mean, I think that's Armenians, there's all sorts of famous quotes about this, but Armenians running into each other in the world, and it's an experience I think we all have versions of. Like, what's it like to be, I don't know, like in some place that you would never expect to run into another Armenian. You're in the Congo, or you're in, like in some rave in Prague, and you run into another Armenian. I mean, there's something beautiful about that. And in the right circumstances, it can lead to great, creative things, business and, I don't know, love connections or art, So, yeah.
You mentioned that in 2018, the Velvet Revolution kind of inspired you to take that 2006 promise more seriously and begin writing about an Armenian story. Mm-hmm. I want to know how during your workshopping process you settled on, yes, I want to tell the story of Armenian repatriates during mid-20th century USSR.
Well, the thing that from the beginning, like, if I was going to make a Armenian film, it had to be something that I felt that I could tell. That wouldn't be just, I'm doing it for someone else. I'm doing it to serve my Armenianness in some way. Like, what story can I tell that feels authentic and I'm pretty sure I have thought for a long time, like, what could I, and I've had people over the years go, oh, I have this genocide script, I have this, and I think it's we have to find what our individual, as filmmakers, as artists, you have to serve both. Doing something related to our culture is great, but if we're not doing it from an authentic voice, it's important, but not as important as the development of Armenian voices. So in terms of the repatriation stuff, yeah, I remember, like everybody, I was kind of following along online during the revolution, and just seeing a lot. I feel like I saw a lot of stuff about it, like young people from the U.S. and from Europe that were there, like, or going there. And from that, I stumbled upon an article about repatriation. It was actually about a period in the 90s, but that then led me to learn about like all the different waves of repatriation that have happened. And this particular period after World War II was particularly fascinating because of all the propaganda that went out, that Stalin put out, and documented stories of people. And I did a lot of research meeting with more descendants of repatriates, but some people that were part of that wave. Again, it's this, we've suffered lots and lots of tragedies and hardships. But it was, it gave me a foundation of a serious time and subject matter to tell a fable, which to me, I've had people with Amerikatsi say, it feels a little silly and it doesn't feel. I didn't want to make a realistic movie. I didn't want to make it's not a historical piece. There are a lot of historical accuracies and things in there that really did happen. And a lot of it's absurd. And I've had younger people actually watch it and go, well, it was great, but why'd you make up that whole thing about him getting arrested for a tie? Or, this is so silly. It's like, that happened. Those things happened. Those details are true. But for me, that period really was it was a nice, it fit being able to tell a story that was, for me, a human story. It's not, this idea of a prisoner watching another person's life from his cell window is based on a true story from a Ukrainian friend of mine that he had told me about. So it was the combination of I was looking for a way to tell that story, and then wanting to always do something in Armenia, that those things kind of came together.
Can we talk a little bit more about the research that went into Amerikatsi, particularly the primary source material that you gathered through documents, photos, oral histories? Mm-hmm. How long did that take? What did the process look like? And my most favorite question that I've actually asked you in public, what happens post-production to this primary source material?
Oh, yeah. It's a good one. I'll answer in reverse. I mean, in terms of, it's like you never know what's gonna land. I think this happens a lot with art. Like, you're making something, you have no idea if it's gonna work or there were many times, especially with a pandemic, where I was like, I guess that was a big waste of 2 years of my life. You just don't know. And so oftentimes in working, you're working very just not taking care of things like that. I mean, and to this day, I'm like, I had this database of Armenian and Soviet Armenian music that I'd spent weeks and weeks and weeks finding online and finding these rare records. And they're fascinating too, because there's this whole genre of, not just with Armenia, but all the Soviet states had to make pro-Stalin music. And so it's Armenian, but it's all about how Stalin is going to save the world. But I had this whole database, and I have no idea where it is now. Because just trying to survive, and so I have some stuff saved, but a lot of times I'm just trying to get to the next place. In terms of that research, I feel like, especially younger people now, the way we gather information is sort of intuitive and unique. We have, when I was younger, it's like, oh, you'd have to go to a research library, or you'd have to meet an expert, or, there was access to information was much different. Now it's like the level of what with dedication, just with your phone now, I can find out all sorts of things and go and go and go. So I think it's about, for me, was finding ways to gather information and how that impresses upon what you're doing creatively. It's not always a one-to-one. Like a lot of times, it's because of a weird piece of music that then this whole idea within the story takes place. Or learning about one thing, it was learning about social traditions or things that existed that don't necessarily exist so much now. Like an earlier script I had, there's a character, Dmitri, who is like the Soviet guy, boss guy. And I had a scene where he put his feet up on a table. And I had this older Armenian friend reading and going, no, that would never happen. It's like, you don't show the bottoms of your shoes. I was like, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, no, you would never, if you did that, like you were at a park bench, somebody would come by and slap you. Like, you don't show the bottom of your shoes. I'm like, I never would have known that. And at first I thought, oh, okay, I have to cut that out. And then I went, oh, wait a minute, that actually could be a good joke. And so I developed a whole part of the script based around that he's trying to imitate somebody in this Western magazine, and then when his wife comes in, he quickly takes his feet off the table. So you never know where, especially with creative writing or creative works, where ideas will come from. And so that research, I almost think it's kind of like it's not like you do all the research and then you do all the writing. It kind of happens together. And, with a film at least, in a film script, I've had, hundreds of drafts of the script. I wrote the first draft fairly quickly, but then I was constantly trying to get feedback, having people read it, revising it based on little details that I'd learned. So it's kind of a process, and the research side of it. The other really interesting little bit of research that I found, I had an older Armenian send me the actual pamphlets, the propaganda that went out through, he said it was actually through the Armenian church, to entice Armenians to come or entice Armenians to come. And it's like, it shows women running through grape fields and men at scientific buildings looking at, and it was all staged, just all fake. But that was quite interesting to see.
Going back to this idea of mentorship, because you were an American coming into Armenia, literally in 2020, to shoot this film, you've spoken about the pivotal role Serj Tankian took, the great musician, in helping with the tone and the music and getting it right. Were there others who consulted on the various aspects of culture that were present? Like, was it important for you to have dance? Was it important for you to include the tradition of speech giving? Like, did you feel at all like a Martian landing on a different planet? Or, I mean, like, how did you even navigate those lands to include or not to include?
Yeah. I mean, I tried to embrace everything as much as I could. Only so much can fit into a film, but yeah, absolutely. I think it's a challenge. I try to do this as a director, and I think it probably applies to other disciplines. But it's kind of like being. There's a quote like, "You want an open mind, but not so open that your brain falls out." Like, you want to be able to take in people's feedback and influence and go like, hey, look, this guy knows way more about Armenian dance than I do. Let's get him involved. But it's putting it into the context of what you're as a director, like you're trying to create. And if all of a sudden this becomes the whole movie is about a dance, that it doesn't work, So how do you allow for various input to make what you're doing stronger, but hold on to like the core vision of what you're trying to do? It's tricky, but and it depends on what you're doing. I mean, there's certain things you don't need everybody's, you could be the only source material you need. But for something like this, where obviously there was a lot that I knew next to nothing compared to other people, I tried to engage people as much as possible. And, I think there was an assumption, maybe just through like the stereotypes of what directors and filmmakers are meant to be, that, I remember coming on set and it was like my first AD, the guy running the set was like, okay, it was like, everybody this, shut up, blah. And then, okay, I'm like, what are you doing? I work in a very cooperative way and positive. Like, I don't want to control everybody and be a dictator. And so doing that without getting taken advantage of, I think a lot of people were like, Mike, you're going to go there. You're too nice. You're way too nice. You don't understand how.
Too American.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, well, that's kind of what the movie's about. But yeah. And with Amerikatsi, Gagik, I don't remember Gagik's last name. Unfortunately, he passed away, but he came, and a lot of the dance in the film, he helped do. Mikhail Voskanian, he's a tar player. Serge found him, and he did pretty much all the folk music in the film was created with him. And this, the set dress, the production designers, they knew, I time and again would be setting up a scene and going, oh, I wrote it as like they're secretly having church in the apartment, because you weren't allowed to. Everybody was scared about religion then, and they would have church in people's apartments. They would close the blinds, and I was setting up the scene, and the production designers came in and said, no, this is not. No, they'd be sitting around the table. That's how it was done. They didn't try to set up a church. This is how we would have done it. So being able to hear and accept people that know more than you, but also strong enough to go, all right, this is fiction. And even though in this case that's correct, it doesn't do what I'm trying to do for the film. You can't just go with what other people say is correct if, the goal is this higher vision. But you do have to be open to it, I think. So.
Was the local enthusiasm, ever too much? Like, I know there wasn't this original idea of including the Armenian Philharmonic, but then it happened.
No, it was never too much. It was always a process, though, of convincing people that we weren't out to scam them. Or there wasn't a catch. The catch was, no, we want the best. We want people involved. We're trying to do something that's beautiful, and we we can't have everybody chip in. It's a movie and it's only an hour and a half long or whatever. But get things like the Philharmonic, that was never in with the budget we have. The idea of having a state philharmonic doing the score for your film, that would never happen. But I think this approach of kind of we're doing this for more than we're trying to create something artistic that we believe in, and having an atmosphere where you allow people to positively encouraging people to get involved. It's not out of we're going to argue over the money. This is what we are. This is what we're trying to do. And it worked. Patrick was very good about this because, as you know, in the Armenian community, there's so much division of this politically or in church or
You don't say.
there's so many different. Oh yeah, gosh, like. And he was like, if we can somehow pull off making this film and include everybody, not say no to, like, let everybody feel they're a part of it. That was our goal, and I think we did a pretty good job of that. Like we always, even if it felt like, oh, these people won't agree with this aspect, we just said, hey, this is what we are. We're doing it for a good reason. We're not doing it to make a bunch of money or we're trying to do something good. People came on board, you know.
I'd love to bookend this wonderful conversation with a nice little pun. Hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
Did you have a clear mission with the film? And do you feel like you accomplished it? Or is it an ellipses?
I think both yes and no. So maybe I'm talking about the ellipses. I think, oddly, I had a very, very clear vision in one respect, which is right from the get-go, I went, okay, the goal of this film is to either get shortlisted or nominated for an Academy Award. Not that I awards are great, but I went, this is an opportunity that not a lot of people see, which is the exposure that we could get for art and also the country, because just based on the odds, like the Academy Awards, like all the other categories, it's every director you can imagine competing for this one category. Best international film, every country gets to submit one film. And most of those countries don't even really make great films. So you're really talking about, even just by submitting a film, Armenia submitting a film, you have pretty good odds to getting noticed. And I was like, this is a no-brainer. Of course, it wasn't that easy, and even getting people here to see like this is a real thing, was difficult. But I felt like, so I was very clear about, like, I planned that from the beginning. I couldn't, I was hoping to get nominated. We got close. But I definitely laid a pathway for myself or other filmmakers to go, oh, this is possible. We can get attention for our country in this way. And it's positive attention. It's not about a tragedy. It's about our art. That's great. In terms of having, like, I was like, oh, I'll make this. I thought, this is an easy movie to make because it all just takes place in a prison cell. I didn't anticipate pandemics and wars. I mean, we wrapped, and 2 months later, the war broke out, and there were, we had cast and crew that went and fought. You can't anticipate these things, but rolling with it and finding a way to have all those obstacles not break us, but make us stronger. For my little little cliche at the end.
Wonderful. I think we could. We'll end with me. I have a lot of language anxiety, so I will thank you in Armenian on the record. Shnora Galutun, all of those syllables. This was wonderful. The ambition was to hear you answer these questions at a deeper level, because the students, the faculty, the AUA community has access to all of those interviews. And so we thought, while you're at AUA, we could change the focal point a little. And it was just so much fun. Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And I haven't been here yet, and I've wanted to come see the campus. So it gives me a nice excuse. Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.